You there?
Yep, I'm there.
Cool, cool. Yeah, dude, looks like we're recording, so
All right,
just
sweet.
don't just don't cuss or do anything too crazy, right?
Yeah. Gotcha.
So cool, dude. Well, thanks for taking some time to sit down. It's funny, man. Like we've been wanting to do this even before Unbound and even before the 24 hour, So it's
Yeah.
like in a way it's kind of like a bummer because now you're famous, right? Like I could have broke the story, but I was too quote unquote busy, I guess. But
uh
yeah, dude, but I think that gives us like more to talk about, right? So
Oh, for
so that
sure.
that's so yeah, dude, that's pretty cool. But let's start at the beginning. I was sitting down thinking yesterday. I was like, man, like, how long have I been working with Will, and like, why the hell did he come to me, and why the hell did I say yeah? Because I remember like when you reached out, I had seen some of your results in some of the West Virginia races, and I was like, ah, he's not very good, and but I didn't really know like it was like your first go around racing, right? And I
Yeah.
also didn't really know what what was coming down the pike and what you wanted to accomplish, and what was really cool though from there is like we said and we talked, and I remember like you said, yeah, man, I want to do some 100-mile races. And I was like, what's the longest ride that you've done? And you're like, well, I rode to like my grandma's house 10 miles down the road, And I was
Yeah,
like,
pretty
I
much.
was like, I was like, man, I don't know. I think we might want to start out like a little less ambitious. This is like a classic case of like the coach getting in the way, right? Like it's like this is a classic case of like when an athlete has a goal, like you let them set the goal and like you just try not to mess them up sometimes, right? But then I was like, okay, so you did like a couple of cross countries, couple gravels, and then I was like, well, before we do a 100 miler, like let's do 100K, and then like you did one of those longer ones, and like it's almost like boring for you, and then that was it. Like that's when you quit listening to me. Like, dude, I gotta go send it, right?
Yeah.
And then from there it was like sky's the limit. And so I kind of want to talk about some of these things that you did do, but the one thing like that I saw and all that, I take it back to like a tangible point. Is like you were not afraid to put in the work, and
hmm
and so I knew like okay, we got something here, and so I kind of want to circle back around, talk about some of that work that you've done. But I guess I kind of want to start with like why did you why did you want to do these crazy like so kind of do that said all that to paint the picture like you didn't have much experience racing or whatever, and then you see these big events, like that's a big bridge to gap. Like, what made you think, well, yeah, I want to go ride my bike 4,000 miles?
Yeah, it's like it kind of happened in a weird way for me because I mean, you started coaching me and like I really didn't have that much experience like you said and was pretty new to the sport, but I'd like come from a running background like at Penn State, so like I knew what it was like to train really hard and like train at a high level. So um and then it's like pretty quickly I remember we started like you said with the 100Ks and like I think I did like 100K and then moved up to the 100 mile, and then like last year was so crazy with COVID that like there really wasn't that much racing and I was training really hard, so like I wanted to go out and do some cool stuff on my bike. So it kind of was like the perfect storm because that got me to just go out, and like last year I did like that 200-mile gravel ride last spring, and then like the Wilderness 202 and like the single track Everest. So it kind of like made me just look at just like having fun doing super long rides. And then when this year came around, I mean, it like moved me over into doing like the Wilderness 303 up at State College, and then that kind of really opened up my eyes. I was like, man, maybe I should do like Unbound XL and go for the 350 miles and like go for 24-hour stuff. So yeah, it's been kind of
Yeah,
like a weird progression.
yeah. I think we need to take a step back because like you, like you just said things I even forgot you did. so like let's back up. So first off, like the Wilderness 202 is an expansion of a race that's a 100-mile NUE race, right?
Yeah.
So you decided, and so it's in and around State College. super gnarly rocks. Like I've ridden parts of that course. I want to throw my bike off the freaking mountain. Like it is not fun. Like there's nothing like no, there's nothing fun about it other than being done, right? So you decided at some point, like I want to do 2 laps of this 100-mile race, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point after that, when everybody, it's funny because like during COVID times, the first thing was everybody was doing push-ups on Instagram. I've never seen so many bad push-ups in my life, right? Like I ruined Instagram. And then all of a sudden everybody was doing Everesting. So
Uh-huh.
you decided, well, I'll do Everesting, but I'll do it on single track, right? So like tell me a little bit about like why you decided to do that. And like that was a long event too. Like that went into the night, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was if I remember correctly, it was like 18 and a half hours. I actually started at like midnight because I was like, I want to get all this night riding done in the first half when I'm fresh. And then I didn't want to ride into the night on the second half because like at that point I wasn't that experienced with that sort of stuff. And when I did the wilderness, the 2 laps of the wilderness, I rode into the night and like finished at 10 o'clock. And it was like a little bit of a traumatic experience being so fatigued and like riding those rocky trails. But just because I didn't have much experience at it at that point. But with the single track Everest, yeah, it was like, I think I just, like you said, like everybody was doing Everest. So I wanted to come up with something that like was exciting to do and would be like a serious challenge. And like, I knew that doing it up at Rothrock, like the trails are, it's not like it's just like a smooth flow trail or something the whole way. Like, it's pretty rocky and steep at the top, and there's like a pretty good rock garden that I would clear like 50% of the time. So I knew it was gonna be a challenge, and like I really didn't even know if I could do it 100% before it. And I remember I talked to you, and you're like, I remember you knew how hard it was gonna be, but you kind of like didn't tell me that it was gonna be so ridiculously hard because you didn't want to scare me. But yeah, like
That's called good coaching right there.
yeah, for sure. Because afterwards I was like, oh my god, that definitely was pretty eye opening for me on just like how like what that ultra stuff really entails and like how deep you actually got to go to like get a goal like that done. But I think that really like kind of opened the door for like after doing the 202 and then the single track Everest, I was like, the single track Everest was harder than the 202. So I was like, I guess that means that I could probably do another lap of the wilderness course. So it kind of set me up for like doing that this spring.
And it's the 303.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So I guess like I kind of want to circle back to like that one point, you're saying you're riding a lot during COVID, races were getting canceled. I mean, for me, I wasn't even the one doing the pedaling, but it was a super frustrating year because, like in the mountain bike world, especially the ultra world, we would see things like, okay, here's this race, and then we would start getting going, and then it would get canceled, right? Like
Yeah.
certain things were just flat out canceled, mostly in the road world, but mountain biking was still trying to like tick along and do some things. And I remember um, it was Mohican that you went to do either I think it's the 100K and ended up being like a freaking 40K or something, right? Like it was just
Yeah.
like everything was a moving target in 2020. And so like how did you've told me like the challenges that you decided to take on, but like how did you just keep your momentum going during COVID? Because like motivation is like motivation is kind of bullshit anyway. It comes and goes. It's whatever. But like, there was something driving you you're well below the surface. Like, so how did you just keep your focus and keep rolling when everything was such a moving target?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what happened was like, I just kind of like took advantage of the situation, and I knew that since I'd only been riding for a couple of years, like a lot of the guys that I wanted to compete against had a lot more miles in their legs. So I know that like we kind of talked about it last year. It's like really just training really hard is gonna like down the road's gonna do a lot more for me than if I was just racing every weekend and like just recovering from races and not really putting in big miles. So yeah, I just kind of like trusted the process on that and was like, I knew that eventually like COVID was going to be over and I was going to get back to like this year, like I mean, some races have been canceled, but for the most part, like we're back to normal on that. So I just knew it was gonna like pay off down the road, and then I just I was like, well, if a race is gonna get canceled, then I'm still gonna be training hard and like do some of my other goals like away from racing, like those long rides. But I mean, I could see for a lot of people how it could be really difficult to be training when like you get to 2 weeks before a race and it gets canceled like 50% of the time or whatever. But for me, it was just like finding the silver lining in that situation.
Yeah, I think the thing that you did really good is you just really leaned into and put your arms around the idea of getting better at bikes, right?
Yeah,
And so if the race happened, like that was icing on the cake. If the race didn't happen, you still had your cake, right? Like you
for
can eat
sure.
cake all day long without icing, but if you've ever sit down and just tried to eat icing, like it doesn't go too well, right? So,
Yeah.
you're baking the cake, like so that's that works out real well. And so I want to kind of I think the big story people really want to hear is the Unbound story. So like to kind of paint it in context, like you done the 101, the 202, the Everest, the 303, and then like the day and I sort of budgeted, okay, hey, you finished 303, like let's take a couple weeks and just be a normal college kid, right? Like go to the bar, flirt with chicks, whatever it is, right? And then like Monday after you finish the Everest, you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I want to do the Unbound 350, right? So, so yeah, we started out thinking you're going to do the Unbound 200, and then a day later you're like, well, I'm going to do the 350. So, like, how did that come about? And then how did that ride go?
Yeah. So it was kind of funny. Like it was like the week or two before Unbound, and I was signed up for the 200, and I just remember like sitting around and I was thinking about like the 200, and I knew it was gonna be like a lot of road tactics and just kind of like it wasn't gonna really be like the strongest dude that wins, or the toughest dude is gonna be. I mean, I think that all those guys are super tough, but it's gonna take a lot of tactics to be in the right position and make the right breakaway. And like I really don't have that much experience with that sort of stuff. And like maybe in the future I'll do the 200, but when I was thinking about the 350, like that just sounded like is right up my alley after the stuff that I'd done. And I knew that it really wasn't going to be tactics as much as just like who's willing to go out there and like dig super deep out and just be by themselves and like grind it out. So it just kind of like clicked in my head, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna just send the 350. And I mean, it was going to be a different sort of challenge since it was going to be self-supported. I knew that was going to make it difficult in different ways than I had like experience in rides before. But yeah, like once I actually got out to Kansas, like I had no clue that race was going to be as ridiculously crazy as it was, but it just like it turned into epic ride. I mean, I started out and I was feeling really good and like was in good position for the first. I mean, for the first like 100 miles, I kind of kept making the separations, and like it got down to three guys at like 100 miles in. It was me, Jay Peterberry, and Taylor Ledeen, and we got to like that gas station at 100 miles, and me and Taylor were feeling good, so we decided to work together like through the night and just kept pulling and knew that we could get a pretty good lead on everybody else. Um, so the night was super cool, and like we both dealt with some mechanical issues. So I was in the lead for a little bit, and then he caught back up after I had a mechanical, and then after those issues, we just decided to just cruise together for a while because we knew there's really nothing to be gained at that point if we were just going to try to like hammer each other into the ground. So everything was going smoothly. We were just kind of sat up and we're happy with our position. And then it was about at like 3 a.m. was when my race started to go really wrong. I was going down this like big rutted down descent, and my front tire just caught like this rut on the. I was kind of like in the rut, and then it caught the side of the rut, and it just flung me down really hard on like my arm and my hand. And I pretty like right away I knew that something bad had happened because like my hand went numb and my arm was bleeding really bad. And uh so I kind of like took saw what the situation was like, and I didn't have any cell service or anything. And after Taylor saw that I was okay, like he went off to the gas station. There's like a gas station 16 miles ahead, and there were some people like affiliated with the race, so he told them that I crashed. But I just got up and like at first I just started walking, and then I started riding again, and like eventually made it to the gas station at 216 miles, and I was in pretty rough shape, but like after I'd pedaled that 16 miles from where I crashed, I knew that like I could keep pedaling still. It wasn't so I could like keep moving forward, and like quitting really wasn't in my head at that point. So um I just like got some food and ice cream and like a soda and everything and sat down on the curb and yeah, just like refueled with that because it had been 100 miles since my previous stop. Um, because there was like one stop in the middle of the night at at 160 miles or something, but it was just like a water stop in some little town and I couldn't find it in the dark. Um, so I was pretty in need of resupply, but, yeah, after that gas station, like I knew there was like 100, let me think. It was like 140 miles at that point I still had to do. And I also knew that it was going to get ridiculously hot the next day. So like I knew it was going to be an insane challenge to get it done. And like I was surprised because I was at that gas station for probably a good 15 to 20 minutes. After
Right.
eating the food, I got the cashier to like tape up my arm, and nobody had passed me. So I was still in second place.
Wait,
But
back up. So wait, back up. So like, so you're sitting here on the curb. You're eating your ice cream sandwich, feeling sorry for yourself. Some poor night cashier, most likely making minimum wage. You roll in looking like a alien, and you're like, "Oh, hey, by the way, like I'm bleeding all over your floor. Can you tape up my hand?" So like, what exactly happened to your hand? And I hope that you left a tip for this poor cashier.
yeah, yeah. It was pretty much my hand was numb at first, and then like I couldn't really move it. I had like no mobility in my hand, and pretty quickly after the crash, it went from being numb to just like being excruciatingly painful. And then my arm was just I got a big my arm got like a big cut in it, like a pretty deep cut, and was just like bleeding all the way down into my glove. And at that point, like I didn't know if my arm was broken because like my hand wasn't that torn up. So I thought like my hand wasn't working because my arm was jacked. And um, but yeah, I walked in there, and the cashier definitely had never seen anything like that before. I mean, she was working in the middle of Kansas somewhere, so I doubt they get many riders in at 5 a.m. But she like at first she gave me like a piece of gauze and I like tried taping it up myself, but I was like too delirious and just could not get it taped. So um eventually she came out and she taped it up, and she taped it like ridiculously tight, but she she wasn't too happy about doing that at 5 a.m. really, but
Yeah, I say, get the F out of here, dude. Like, I am not dealing with this, man. Like, no way. Okay.
yeah, yeah, that was pretty funny. But I mean,
Well,
that was the fortunately she was game for it, because I think that that really kind of saved my effort for the rest of the day.
yeah, it was funny because that particular weekend, I was at a GNCC and I was telling some of the guys, like, hey, there's this crazy MNFer up in Pittsburgh. He's doing this stupid ride. It's going to be 350 miles. And you had that live tracker, right? And so it started at Saturday or went into Sunday, or maybe I have my days mixed up. But I remember going to bed that night going, holy shit, like Will's going to pull this off.
Yeah.
Like, because like, I think we're definitely going to win, definitely going for the podium. Not trying to take any respect away from the guys that have more experience and get results in those. So when I went to bed, I was like, oh yeah, here we go. Like, because the work that you had done leading up into that point, I knew you would be strong when it got the hardest, both
Yeah.
mentally and physically. Because I think we'd spent a lot of time like, just this is, just saying things and being aware of like, hey man, like if you're not crying and shitting yourself, you're not going hard enough, right? And while that sounds like so offensive to like people that don't push themselves, that's
Uh-huh.
absolutely like like how it has to be for these type of efforts, right?
for
Like a
sure.
little joking in there, but a little seriousness too, right? So I knew like when it got hard, like you were going to be good to go. But I didn't know it was going to get that hard for you, right? And so then I woke up the next day and like you were in second, and and I was like, okay, maybe you're going to catch whoever's in first or whatever. And I still didn't know any of this stuff had happened. I'm just looking at a dot on a map, right? Um and so telling guys like, oh dude, he's on this, oh dude, he's on this, and oh shoot, and you just trying to kind of follow it a little bit, and then all of a sudden I'm like, you're kind of reeling first back in. And again, I had no idea this was happening. So like, I just think that really speaks to like just having really big goals, holding yourself accountable, and then realizing like, as we said going into this race and other races, the only thing that's going to hold you back is yourself. When you're this
Yeah,
prepared, like you get your mind right, like it's go time. There's nothing worse, as you said, like you popped up, you didn't even think about quitting. You're just like, okay, how do I keep going? Right.
for
And like
sure.
having that mindset going into it is like it's everything. Right. And so like the one thing I want to kind of like, you know, touch upon is, well, let you get to the finish of the race, and then there's a couple like threads I want to pull on. So you leave the gas station, it's 5 a.m., you're rolling, and then it starts to get hot. Then what
Yeah,
happens?
yeah. So yeah, I roll out of that gas station and yeah, it just starts to get really hot right away. And out in Kansas, there's really like no shade. You'll go probably like 10 to 15 miles just like on straightaways along these pastures without passing a single tree. Um, and like pretty quickly, the whole like trauma from the whole crash and everything kind of caught up to me after leaving the gas station. And I was in like rough shape, and I was riding with, so it was my left hand that broke. So I was just using my right hand to like steer the bike and everything, and then I could rest my left hand on the bars, but I couldn't grip anything, so I couldn't use my brake. And then anytime I came up to a bump or anything, I'd take my left hand off and just ride with my right hand. So I was doing like most of the descents just one handed, and yeah, I also couldn't really drink and eat like my whole like before the race. I know that we talk all the time about like that like these ultra races are really like an eating competition, and you really just got to like stay on top of that stuff if you want to do well. And that kind of went out the window a little bit. Like I was trying to stay on top of that stuff, but there's just so much other things going on that it was difficult, and I couldn't really reach down with my right hand to grab a bottle while to drink while on the bike or eat while on the bike because I couldn't like balance the bike with my left hand. So uh, that caught up to me, and I got pretty delirious and like started hallucinating and stuff. Um, Probably at like 250 miles or so when the heat of the day set in. And at one point, I was just like sitting on the edge of this field and in this tall grass, and I like broke down and was crying because like it wasn't because I was feeling sorry for myself, but it's because I knew at that point that I was going to finish the race. But I also knew like what that entailed and like how ridiculously hard it was going to be to like accomplish that goal. So after that, I got up and I just I just took it like one turn at a time. I mean, I had to run my Garmin for navigation, so I'd be like, just make it 3 miles to the next right turn, or make it to the next town, and eventually made it to the next water stop in this town. I believe it was at 280 miles, and at first I couldn't find the water just because it was like somebody's spigot in their backyard. So I was like, I had a moment of panic when I thought I was gonna die in that town for a second because I was out of water. But I like passed it by a mile, and then I went back and found it, and like so I refilled there, and I just like forced myself. I was like, you gotta chug a lot of water if you're gonna make it. So I kind of like forced myself to drink some water and like put some electrolytes in there, and then kept going. And I believe the last gas station stop was 311 miles. So I got there and just got some more ice cream and some more soda. And like, I still couldn't really believe that I was in second place. Like, I knew that just because how slow I was going on the descents one handed, um, I was still like, my legs like surprisingly felt pretty decent. So I'd try to rip like any of the smooth climbs and stuff like that. So like, but yeah, I was like, dang, I'm still in second place. So I got there and like tried to be quick. And I still knew that like the biggest challenge wasn't going to be getting second. The biggest challenge was going to be still just finishing because the type of shape I was in. But yeah, I just kept going, and like eventually I caught up. I believe the 350-mile course intersects with the 100 and 200-mile course, with like 30 miles to the finish or something. So I saw all these riders with 30 miles to go, and I caught up. And yeah, I just started passing the 100-mile people, and that kind of gave me a boost. And they probably thought I was crazy because like I was screaming in pain like every time I'd hit a bump, which is like every 10 feet on those roads. But yeah, made it to the finish line, and it was pretty cool. I was kind of in shock at the finish line and it didn't really set in too much, but I still didn't really know that my hand was broken. I knew that I need stitches on my arm, but after sitting around at the finish for a little bit, I went to the emergency room, and that's when I got x-rays, and they told me that my hand was broke, and I got the stitches. And they were most happy I came in just because I'd gotten rhabdo, and so I got some IVs for that, and they're pretty concerned about that. So I spent the night there. But yeah, at that point, it kind of set in like how crazy of an experience that was. And like, I was proud that I like stuck with it. And because it's always so easy to quit. Like you could, like, that's so ridiculously hard that you can easily just be like, you know what, I'm just calling the sag wagon, and I'm going to just say like, oh, I crashed, like it's over. But I was happy that I stuck with it. And like, even though I didn't win, that experience meant a lot to me. And it kind of like set me up. It gave me a lot of confidence for like the future, that I can go that deep again, and that I can like push beyond that. And like when it gets hard, like I'm not going to give into it. So yeah, it was kind of like a culmination of all the work and everything that I'd done for the past couple years training with you. And um yeah, it's just like I felt like I owed it to myself and to like other people that believed in me to go out and like not give up after all the work that was put in. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Except like, there's no way you were going to quit. Like you act like, yeah, it was. I had to make sure I wasn't going to quit. Like we both know that. Like you were going to like walk to the finish. Like that's
Yeah.
like that's just how you're wired. So yeah. So I think the one thing I wanted to like a couple of points. I remember when I posted on social like, hey, like this was pretty sick. Look what we'll pull it off. And or I think I just reposted what you had put up there. Like, okay, I ended up in the ER. I broke my hand. Blah blah blah. And well, not blah blah blah. Like you had a hard time on it, right? Like, and a couple of people were like, kind of pushed back, like, oh, that's too gnarly, that's too extreme. Like, a Vision Quest is fine. This is over the top, and I like took like a real big exception with that, right? And
Yeah.
so like first, like I'll give them the buffer of like, well, they don't really know all of the things that you did to get to that point. It's not like
Yeah.
you went from the couch to a a couch to a marathon, or couch to this, or couch whatever. It's not like you just woke up like, I'm going to go ride 500 miles.
For sure.
Like they didn't see the 202, the 303, the single track Everest. However, I do think there are a large contingent of people out there that because they can't do something, or they wouldn't take on that challenge, that they go, oh, that's way too gnarly. That's way too dangerous. They've never done anything that hard. They've never accomplished anything like that. Like, so, to people, and I'm sure you saw some naysayers like, oh, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Like,
Yeah.
what do you say? This is your opportunity. You can't post on social, hey, leave me alone, you're a moron, right? But like, it's my podcast. I can say what I want, right? So it's my party. I'll do what I want.
Yeah.
So what do you say to like that type of mentality and that type of person that's like trying to rain on your parade?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was also kind of surprised that there like was some blowback from what I did. And yeah, like you said, like I'd done a lot of work going into that, and like I was incredibly prepared for that race. So like I knew that my body was ready for it. It wasn't like I was just sitting on the couch. So I knew what I was capable of, and like yeah, I just felt like I owed it to myself to finish it. I mean, like I can't talk for what other people, like I'm sure that I'm kind of the outlier that I'd finish in that situation. And like yeah, I don't know. That's just a lot of people I guess aren't wired like that, but um yeah, I mean, I feel like people should just like take it for what it is. Like I decided to go and push through, and like sure I like went through a lot of pain, but like I got it done, and like I wouldn't have any other way for myself. So yeah, I really don't know what to say.
Yeah, I hear you. Um, so people probably don't, well, of course they don't realize like our relationship. Like our relationship is you do something super freaking crazy on Saturday and or Sunday or Friday through Sunday. Then Monday, I'm like, okay, dude, you need to take a rest day. You're like, okay, cool. And then you ask me like, hey, can I do something super crazy? And what's crazy about like you've done all these things we've referenced, we haven't even talked about the things I quote unquote haven't let you do, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, 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 we're not going to do that. No, 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 we're not doing that, right? But after Unbound, it was like 2 days. I mean, like maybe three. You got home, you been to the doctor, da da da. But then it was okay. I'm going to go to 24-hour nationals. I think that was sort of like floating on the periphery, but because of the hand situation, we didn't really know if that was going to be feasible or not. We looked at the x-rays. It was like, yeah, you can still train, blah, blah, blah. Like it's not going to be comfortable, but you can do it if you want, right?
Yeah.
And so I think at that point we were kind of joking, like, well, 24 hours it's going to be easy, and again, like that's not to downplay the race or the competition. It's just like a testament to all the stuff that you've done leading up to that point, right? It was just
Yeah.
going to kind of be a walk in the park. So you head out to 24-hour national championships, uh, and then what happened?
Yeah. So it was kind of a weird lead up to that because like dealing with that hand injury, like I was in a splint and like I could train on the gravel bike still, and I mean I was just doing the gravel bike on the road, but I was wearing the splint the whole time and couldn't really do too much. And then it was like the weekend before heading out. Since I was driving out to Oregon, I had to like leave a week early, and
Wait,
um
back up. So when you say I really couldn't do too much, dot dot dot, I was doing 9 to 12 hour rides. Okay, anyway,
yeah.
not just casual rides around the park. Okay, gotcha. So
Yeah. I couldn't do too much off road, but yeah, yeah, like the weekend before I left for Oregon, I finally got on my mountain bike again and like took off my splint, and I realized that it was gonna be definitely a challenge out there because I couldn't really ride too well, and like the week before, I couldn't like even really move my hand yet. I couldn't make a fist or anything, so yeah, I knew it was gonna be tight, but made it out to Oregon, and like the course was super smooth, and I was really happy after seeing that because I was like, all right, here we go. I think I'll be able to ride like pretty close to 100%. Like sure, my hand wasn't 100%, but I didn't think it would affect me that much. And yeah, the race started, and like pretty quickly it was just me and one other guy, like probably like 7 hours in or so, and then by the time night came around, I had built up like a 45-minute lead, and then the course got like they're just braking bumps developed all over the course just because people were just hammering out laps. Like there's probably thousands of laps done, so that kind of was something that I didn't really expect or didn't think much of before the race, but it pretty quickly became like a pretty big issue for me because my hand was just getting battered. So that became pretty painful, and I knew it was gonna kind of make the last like 12 hours or so pretty difficult. But like you said, I had done doing the wilderness thing, which was like 32 hours, and then doing Unbound, which was 12 hours after the injury and like 24 and a half hours total. Like even though it was pretty painful and like, and it's always hard riding 24 hours, like I'd always think to myself, I'd be like, all right, at least I didn't just break my hand, or like, at least I don't have another 8 hours after I hit 24 hours. So, that was kind
right.
of the cool thing is like finally seeing that like doing that really hard stuff like really pays off, because in those races, it's like all the guys at the top are really fit and like everybody's fast, but it's more about like who's going to tough it out and like not freak out, because plenty of time in those races, like if you're doing a race that's 24 hours long, like you'll drop guys doing like zone 1 just because they get in their own head and they start like thinking about how long they're going to be on their bike. But like after getting the experiences that I've got this past year, like I have kind of like, I don't really think like that anymore, and just know that like I could that it really isn't that bad, and like 24 hours really isn't that long of a time when you think about it. Like sometimes at the moment you're like, oh man, 24 hours seems like forever, but then you kind of can just take a step back. You're like, oh yeah, tomorrow I'll be sitting down for lunch at like some restaurant. It's all gonna be over. So just like enjoy being in the moment, enjoy like having that opportunity to just go out and like get your goal done after all the hard work.
Yeah, and I think with how you set your training and your goals up, when you are in the moment, you're able to execute, right? So as an example, when you do something like the 20, or I'm sorry, the single track Everesting, well, just to get up that climb, if we go back and look at your file, just to get up that climb, you have to push out threshold power,
Yeah.
right? And so you're 11, 15, 18 hours into this thing, and you're learning, oh crap, like I can still push out threshold power. The only reason I wouldn't be able to do that is if I got, as you're saying, in my own head and could only ride
Mm-hmm.
zone 1. So now, like when you set up and you're like, okay, I'm going to get a 24-hour worlds, or I'm sorry, nationals, okay, well, the only reason I can't ride threshold on this climb at hour 18, it's only on me, right? Like,
Yeah.
did I take care of like my macros? Meaning, did I eat? Did I drink? Did I, whatever? And now am I present enough in this moment to actually execute how I'm able to do that? And if I've done this in training, I've done this in prep, I've done this in a previous race. Well, again, the only thing holding you back is your own willingness to put in that suffering, right? To
Yeah.
put in that effort. So yeah, so you ended up, how'd you end up at that race?
Yeah, I ended up getting the win. It was like, it was kind of a cool end of the race because I had lapped everybody, and my buddy got second place, so he was the last person that I lapped. And so by the morning I caught up to him, and yeah, we rode in like the last couple laps together, and was able to get, I did 23 laps, and the last course record was 22 laps. So it was just, yeah, it's a cool way to finish. And it was also cool because like hopefully that will kind of help me get to Worlds in Australia in November. So I'd be excited to see how I stack up against those guys.
Yeah, awesome, dude. So yeah, so what's next? I'm sure, if this was just our regular one-on-one conversation, I'd be like, okay, dude, let's take a couple of days off, and then you're going to say, oh no, I've got this, this, and this to do. So like, what's up? What's coming up over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, the next couple weeks are going to be pretty crazy because I got Wilderness 101 this Saturday, which at this point I think will feel kind of like a short track race. And then and then after that I got a couple days off before I'm going to be heading up to Vermont on Wednesday next week, so a week from now, and go up and go for the Vermont Super 8 FKT, which it's a 640 mile gravel ride, but it's really, I'm going to be using my full suspension mountain bike because the trails are pretty gnarly. So it's pretty much a 640 mountain bike ride, and I think the plan is to do it in like 3 days.
And FKT, for those that don't know, fastest known time. So like you're going to go send it for 3 days.
Yeah. I'm gonna go send that. So that would be cool because that's kind of gonna be my first like overnight. Well, I mean, I really don't count 24 hours as like overnight because you're riding the whole time. But like for that Vermont thing, like I'm gonna have to bring emergency bivy to sleep in and like recharge my stuff at like laundromats and like do all that sort of stuff. But so I'm excited for that. And then a couple weeks after that, I got Leadville on the calendar. So yeah, we'll have like 2 weeks to recover, and and get ready for Leadville, which will be cool.
There's something else, man. you make me earn my keep. Well, cool, dude. Well, I'm gonna let you scoot. Before I do, I want to give you. So I want you to tell people where they can find or follow you, and then who's backing you, who's behind you, supporting you, that you want to plug and thank.
All right, cool. Yeah. You can follow me at Will Lovner on Instagram and Facebook, and my supporters are like Flow Formulas helps me out a lot. Get to these races, as well as Dirty Harry's has kept my bike running, and like they're always in to get me rolling before races since I ever started riding. And then also Goat Rodeo Cheese. Got to shout out the family business just for not thinking I'm too crazy.
Right, which is interesting because when we first started working together, I looked you up and your handle on Instagram was like Goat Wrangler or something, right? And I was like, what the heck is this all about? So your family business is like goats stuff. Like what is?
Yeah. The family business is, we got like 100 goats. They're dairy goats, and we got a creamery on the farm, so we make goat cheese and sell it at like restaurants and grocery stores like Wegmans and Whole Foods and stuff. So it's kind of it's a cool business to be in, and you gotta love goats. So yeah.
Yeah, and tell me the name of the business again.
Yeah, it's Goat Rodeo Farm and Dairy.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So, cool.
All right, dude. Well, thanks for taking the time to sit down and just enjoy a 100-mile race this weekend. Feeling like it's quote unquote only 7 hours? Is that what you're kind of going for?
Yep. Yeah. It's gonna be fun.
Heck yeah, dude. All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man.
See ya.
See ya.